Hello and welcome to another edition of Lean Catalyst. My name is Damon Baker and I'm the CEO of Lean Focus. And in this dynamic monthly 1-hour interview series, we will bring together like-minded CEOs and leaders who successfully embrace the lean thinking to drive exceptional results in their organizations. Through captivating conversations, we'll dive into their remarkable achievements, uncovering their strategies, insights, and practical wisdom that have propelled their organizations forward. Each series features an in-depth interview with the distinguished CEO who's demonstrated an extraordinary leadership in leveraging lean principles, and it's a great opportunity for them to share their experiences, strategies, and valuable knowledge that others can apply to their own leadership journeys. Today's guest is Stan Askren, who is the former CEO of HNI Corporation, and Stan served as the CEO and chairman of HNI from 2004 until December 31st, 2018, and as CEO of HNI from 2004 until July of 2018. Previously, he was the president of HNI from 2003 to April of 2018 and executive vice president of HNI from 2001 to 2003. He worked for HNI for over 27 years, including roles as vice president of marketing, vice president of HR, and as an executive vice president, president of HNI's hearth and home business segment. And Mr. Askren has worked in several industries, previously held multiple executive management and general management positions in such companies as Emerson Electric, Thomson S.A, and of course, HNI. And he is also a lifetime inductee of the Shingo Academy Lean Hall of Fame. Stan currently serves on the board of Sylvamo, which is a paper company. He's also been a former board member of Allison Transmission as well. And he holds a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Northern Iowa and an MBA from Washington University in St. Louis. Good morning, Stan. How are you doing?
Good, Damon. You?
I'm doing well. Thank you for joining us this morning. Can you share briefly with the audience a fun fact or an interesting tidbit about your background that people might not know about you?
Well, that's a good question. You know, I'm a dog owner. I've got a black lab and a golden doodle, and an active pilot. I don't know if that's fun facts or just facts.
And I think one of your fun facts too on the pilot track is that you have a retired fighter jet. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I fly an L-39, which is mechanics call him a commie jet. It's a communist jet. It's a trainer jet that they use to qualify pilots to fly MiGs in the Soviet bloc countries. It sounds cooler than it is, but it's pretty cool. It's an L-39 jet. Fun, good transportation.
Yeah, what I thought was interesting, I picked you up from a regional airport one time. You flew that thing in, and the mechanic and ground crew staff that had to deal with the jet when it landed were probably a little awestruck and surprised that they were dealing with what looked like an active fighter jet, not a retired fighter jet.
Yeah.
So I'd like to get into the history of HNI a little bit. So you did the majority of your career there, 27 years, and you were really there from the beginning of HNI's lean journey. So walk us through how that evolved. You know, what was the starting point? How did HNI get involved on the lean journey? Just help us, go back in time to what was going on at the time, why you decided to do that, and what was the story around how it got started?
Yeah. So if I ramble on, Damon, I know you redirect. Looks like I've got a little glare coming in through the light through the door too. Apologize. So I was hired in as the corporate VP of HR at HNI. My predecessor's name was Jack Michaels, and Jack walked in my office one day early and threw a resume at me, threw it on my desk, and said, "I don't know anything about this guy, but I hear he knows world-class manufacturing, so why don't you interview and tell me what you think?" And so I spent a Saturday. The guy's name was George Konissacker. He's the one who brought, I think, lean to Danaher in the early days, Jake Braken. George is a passionate lean individual. And sorry about that. Let me move, Damon. And
that looks good.
Okay. And George, I interviewed George, and I understood about half of what he was talking about, but I believed in what he said, and I listened to examples. And my boss at the time was hired, and it was back in the era when world-class manufacturing was a big mantra. There's a book out by a guy named Schoenberger, and HNI was losing share, and actually our productivity had flattened, and it wasn't a good scene. And so I approached Jack and said, I don't know what this guy does, where we put him, but I would hire him. And so we hired George, and really we made a job for him, and he led our lean initiative, and it was amazing. And so he initiated in a building products company, and I saw that sort of transpire. Did an office furniture as well, and then became convinced that it was the right thing for us to be doing.
Was it clear at the time that you guys were embarking on a lean journey, or it was just George going and figure it out? Was there any formality around it, or was this the organization put a lot of faith in one individual to sort of get started and moving in the right direction?
Well, I give my predecessor all the credit in the world. He had the courage to go ahead and put the resources behind it and engage his personal time and the executive's time. And there was huge organization resistance at the time. And George is a passionate individual that had seen the benefits, and we took on lean and began to see the results, not right away, but 18 to 24 months afterwards, we saw the results, and away it went. But it became a formal initiative in the corporation.
So when you were in the HR role at the time, when did you really start to get involved in your capacity as an HR leader?
Early on, because I was an org development, org change individual, number one. Number two, I signed up for lean events in the plants. Number three, I went to Japan for training and did a lean event with Hitachi. I'm trying to think now. It was a Hitachi commercial compressor factory.
Was that through Shingajitsu at the time?
Yeah, through Shingajitsu.
Mm-hmm.
At the time. Awada was around there, and we went on a tour. We visited lots of Japanese plants, and I saw the power of that. And once you see it, you just can't help but know that it's truth and light, and it makes all the sense in the world.
What sort of things did you have to unlearn as a leader as a result of some of those experiences when you went back and sort of reflect on what it meant to you and your leadership style and how you approached your work? What key things changed for you?
I think the key thing is to see how it impacts leadership, and for me to figure out I didn't have to have all the answers.
Was that new for you?
Well, it was newer at the time because I was this young hotshot MBA, that'd been trained in problem solving and all this stuff, and it wasn't hugely new for us because our culture was one of empowered employees. We called them members at that time. Well, always been called members. That's why I went to work there. And so it wasn't hugely, but it was a change in how we managed, significantly managed. Is that was a big part of it. And then, it was powerful to see people that knew the work, knew the jobs, and you teach them the tools, and you have the courage to knock down the obstacles for them. Man, they run with it, and that was powerful.
What sort of, talk to us about some of the early mistakes that were made in that journey, and what were some of the lessons learned from that?
How much time do you have?
Yeah, we got 51 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of lean is the courage to move forward, and don't let perfection get in the way of good. And so there were times that we took on our, there's some things I would do differently. I would have learned probably a little bit different. I don't know. We took on some of our biggest product lines, some of our toughest factories, and we a lot of lean. What lean is lowering the water level. We found some big rocks, and man, we hit those rocks hard. and it's the courage to sort of stay the course and trust the process and figure it out and stay with it, commit to solving the problems and not chickening out and flinching and moving, backing up. So that was a big part of what we learned.
And was that attributed to some of the commitment of Jack at the time and sort of staying the course no matter what? How involved was the board in what was going on at the time? Was there pressure from shareholders? So how did you sort of keep the barbarians at the gate, if you will, while you were learning how to do this in the right way?
Yeah, I think that the big part was staying after it. Shareholders they didn't really know what was going on. They just kind of trusted our improvement process. Same with the board. They knew what was going on sort of generally enough to sort of leave us alone. It was really, Jack's commitment to not flinching and Jack's courage to keep on going. And then the management. And once you start, there was no going back, or we would have had an insurrection with employees, members on the production floor, because we turned them loose. We said, hey, we value your input. The job's better than we do. Show us where the waste is. Show us where the value is, and we'll give you the tools. And away we went.
Yeah. So what was the year you took over from Jack as CEO?
Well, it was really it was 98. I became CEO. Boy, time flies, doesn't it?
And when you got into that role, how did you think about your leadership style as a new CEO and how you're going to keep the lean journey alive inside of HNI? So were you thinking about it? Were you strategizing? Was it more organic than that? So kind of walk us through that changing of the guard and how you were going to put your stamp on what lean meant in HNI's journey at that point in time.
Yeah, I think in part I was picked to be Jack's replacement, in part because I got lean and I was committed to lean, number one. Because the company was founded on a concept of finding a better way. And, the world changes. And so, lean is such a beautiful thing because you take out the waste. And so, my stamp, and we'd been at it for, at that point, half a dozen years. And so my stamp on it was renewing that focus and renewing, because what we do is we take the good lean leaders and we promote them. Well, one of the dirty secrets about lean is your best producing plants are the ones with the stable leadership. And so part of what I needed to make sure when I took over was that we focused on the lean concepts, and that we retrained the leaders, and we went to executive lean events. Similar to what we learned a lot by benchmarking from Danaher and others, saying, executive leadership is the way to go. We need to get them involved.
So that was a new spin on it at that point in the journey. So, kind of a question outside of HNI. So you've been on boards, you're actively on boards, you see a lot of companies. So how, in lean, they talk about constancy of purpose. So, what happens a lot in publicly traded companies when a CEO is not delivering results, they yank the CEO, they put a new person in there, and immediately that individual is wanting to put their mark on the organization, and they'll start by ripping out the values and implementing a new or instituting a new business system. So how important is that? I heard you say one of the reasons you were chosen was because of your knowledge of lean and your passion for lean. How important is that for organizations to stay the course, to have, I guess in this case, it would be a board really that supports the direction of lean, so that the next person that's in the role, that's one of the qualifying criteria that they have, so that the organization doesn't lose focus over time?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important that the board understand lean, and that there's consistency of where we're going, and they trust the tools and the process of lean. And often corporations screw this up because lean is hard. There's no doubt about it. I think it's one of the dirty secrets is, lean is hard. It takes commitment, and organizations tend to move towards entropy. The third law of thermodynamics is real. And we're basically all, me included, me leading the group, are lazy slobs. And all you need to do is look at what I'm looking at right now in my kitchen, and you'll see that we tend to move from organized to disorganized. And if you don't have lean and the discipline of hanging in there on lean and keeping things organized, it tends to gravitate towards something that's disorganized. Number one. Number two, you're right. If you replace a CEO and your new CEO, your objective is to prove your significance and your relevance. The way you do that is you bring new processes and new change. And often it's contrary to the organization's objective and purpose. And so, I think, a big mistake is companies that start lean and they don't finish it. They move on to something else. Organizations, the people in the organization say, okay, this is like, remember quality groups?
Or quality circles.
Quality circles and all that stuff. They say, okay, this is the program of the month. Let's see what happens next. And that's why I say, if you're not committed to lean, don't start it, because it's hard, and you'll start it and you inoculate the organization to change. You give them just enough of an antibody that they resist catching the fever down the way.
If you look back on that journey, what do you wish you would have done differently, or maybe started in a different way?
Yeah, I wish we would have got at the total enterprise earlier. I wish we would have got at the paper factories, the office earlier. I don't regret a lot, in retrospect. I look at it, it's like, we trained, we had to convince the organization that lean worked. But the office, if you look at your cost structure of most businesses, we tend to focus on direct labor, and direct labor typically is less than 2 digits in most organizations. It tends to be material yield or SG&A or overhead, and that's where we should be focused. But sometimes direct labor is the easiest thing to focus on, so that's where we go.
How long did it take to come to that realization?
Couple years, too long.
Yeah. And how receptive was that part of the organization to starting and embarking on a lean journey, and what people have a hard time sort of wrapping their head around? How does this stuff apply?
Yeah, it's hard, and the office in particular is hard. We have no problem going to production line and changing work on the production line. We have great difficulty going to the office and telling George or Sally that their job is changing for whatever reason. I don't know why. I never did figure it out. So it's harder, but the results are better, because part of this is thinking about how does the customer benefit the most. And you see it time in, time out now is it's the customer experience. It's the complexity of the process, the order, so we got after the 5 flows, sort of spec to order to schedule to delivery to pay. And I wish we'd gotten those earlier. And there's more waste in those processes than there are in the manufacturing processes, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. As you look out today and you think about CEOs in today's companies, do you think their understanding around lean is getting better, it's getting worse, it's staying the same? Do you think it's lost its emphasis in most organizations? Sort of like, if you were to do a state of the union on lean today and corporations, and whether or not leaders are embracing it as a way to drive results in their businesses, how would you answer that question?
I think lean is getting harder. I don't think CEOs understand lean very well. I think they're looking for panacea. I don't think they understand the power of lean and how you deliver lean to your customer. Would be my answer. I think this country goes through, or business goes through, cycles. So now it's the sustainability, ESG, diversity and inclusion cycle, and it's the COVID cycle. And I think lean has picked up some bad connotations. Lean is the enemy of innovation. Lean means, you just take cost out. It's not true. Lean is about taking waste out. And the term lean in itself has got a negative to it. So I think, new CEOs are looking for the answer in the wrong places. And a lot of this lean is just practical, fundamental. How do we take the waste out, and how do we develop more value for our customers?
Do you think part of that is due in part to this does, to your point, you said earlier, that this requires discipline, consistency, staying the course, and it's really difficult in today's world to be consistent and trust the process when you have
Yeah,
all these other demands for things, and people want results and they want them fast, and they want to see things happen yesterday. And oftentimes, I've heard you say this: lean is like, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back.
yeah, I think that's it. It falls under the label of courage. It takes courage to do lean. Lean is hard work. Lean takes time. Lean takes focus. Lean takes courage, because it is 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. Sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. And the payoff for lean is typically 18 to 24 months, is what I learned. And CEOs are under the gun to deliver quarterly earnings per share, profit growth, and it's tough. And right now, the CEO's job is impossible, because they've got all these constituents they've got to respond to, and not everybody likes lean, because lean is change. Change is difficult.
Were there points in your HNI career where you questioned whether or not you were on the right path, and maybe specifically like downturns in the economy, 2008, and this big events where maybe you had to internally sort of regroup and ask yourself as a leadership team if you guys were on the right path with continuous improvement at HNI?
I would say I never questioned lean. Lean, I did learn a lot about lean. Lean will not fix a bad strategy. Lean will not fix a declining industry. Lean doesn't fix some things that are just headwinds. Like, you can't win the America Cup if you're sailing a tugboat. And sometimes people try to lean out a tugboat. And as a CEO, you figure out, it's like, man, do I have the right strategy? Am I serving the right customers with the right product? Am I in the right markets? Is this the right value proposition? If the answer is yes to all those, lean is fantastic. If the answer is no to all those, then forget it. Move on to something else.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's like, why apply waste elimination to an industry that is dying? I think about like the buggy whip industry compared to
Yeah,
the Model T, and it's like we can go in and we can lean out all the processes related to these buggy whips, but it's just a matter of time. And in today's world, there's all sorts of versions of the modern day buggy whip where I see organizations just chipping away at pennies, and nobody's sort of zooming out and going, what is the overall strategy, and how do we win, and are we in the right markets, and should we even be in this
right.
market that we're in currently?
I think it was Drucker said, the only thing worse than doing something inefficient, I'm paraphrasing, is to spend time trying to make something I shouldn't be doing at all more efficient. And it's a
Yeah.
little bit, the only thing worse than trying to lean out something that is dead is, let's see, I can't even finish the concept, we should, I think the lesson I learned, Damon, is I tried to lean out things I shouldn't have been doing at all. And I would have been better just to kill them and move on to the value added stuff. So, one of the things I believe in is as a senior leader, is you should spend time thinking about what's the portfolio, what is it I'm doing, and am I creating value with the right customers in the right markets, with the right products, with the right value proposition. And I should go for that, and I should do the 20/80 and think about, do you lean out the variation, or do you lean out the runners? Great question, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. On that angle, I get asked this question a lot by CEOs, and they say, yeah, I aspire to be a lean CEO, Damon. Help me to organize my calendar and my activities. What should I be doing as a CEO to lead a lean business system culture inside my organization? So if I were to toss that question to you, and if Stan were to help a CEO design the perfect calendar year, how does a CEO spend their time driving a lean business system culture inside of their organization from the top? Like what sorts of activities and buckets of time should they be spending in these different areas?
Yeah. I think they need to go to Gemba. They need to spend their time with customers who create the value on the production floor or create the value. They need to be involved in the improvement events. They need to ask the right questions about, what's the problem we're trying to solve? Is the problem statement correct? How do we solve it? Do we have the right measurements? Are we asking the right questions? And so they should spend their time in those areas and not, and it becomes a little bit of lean is about identifying problems. And so you got to find a way to reinforce with people that are operating in the red. We were talking about this the other day that hey, you're doing well. Keep going. Realize that what we're doing here is tough, and realize that what we're doing here is identifying the problems and not beat people up because they're in the red. That's where they should spend their time.
So I heard you say participate in Kaizen. So are you saying actually be a team member in Kaizen events as a CEO of an organization?
Yes, I think so. And it because it takes the organization will look at you and say, how serious are they? Well, when you commit your calendar to Kaizen events and shop floor Kaizen events, then they'll take notice.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
the benefit for you is you learn the tools, you learn the product, you learn where the waste is. A lot of the decisions that I learned are not, it's not taking 8-second sum of the cycle out. And this is one of the lessons I learned early on is we did lean and we couldn't figure out why it wasn't hitting the bottom line. It was because of how we were loading the shop. We do this lean and we feel really good about it. And then we run an order in and say, hey, we're running a hot list everywhere. We tell the production, hey, production, stop whatever you're doing. You need to work on this because I just got a call from my best buddy who's one of my customers, and he's because our process is screwed up, he's placed the wrong order and he needs this product for his customer. Instead of figuring out how do we get lean going through and getting that figured out and getting that smoothed out and getting completing on time so we have capacity to respond to customer, we just kept hammering away. And so that's one of the things I'd say.
Kind of along those lines, if you're to reflect back on your career and even in your role as a board member, what are some of the best practices, things that you sort of reach into your bag that you deploy as best practices or tactics to ensure that you're driving results in an organization? So if you could say like the CEO's tips and tricks, if you will, the secret sauce that made Stan go, how would you teach that and what are those items?
Yeah, again, I don't know how successful I was. So I'd say, if I was coaching somebody, I'd say, get involved, do executive lean events, spend time with a customer, get the right metrics, get the right plan, understand what's value, what's not value, identify the big problems in the organization, take those on. You should lead the initiative to solve these big problems, because often the big problems are the ones that transcend, operations, sales, marketing, and information flow, financial flow, product flow, etc. Those are the big things. So the CEO should be involved in those things. And it's interesting. The board's job is to make sure we have the right CEO, and the CEO has the right strategy, and that they're implementing the strategy. I don't think it's really a board's role to be driving lean. I think they want to make sure there's a CEO that buys into lean. I'm with you there, and buys into value creation and knows how to treat people the right way. But it's really the CEO's job and the management team's job, senior leadership team job, to get the results and to find the process to do that.
how important is it for a CEO to have a coach on this lean journey, or a sensei, whatever you want to call it?
You know,
And does it,
I think it's very important because you want somebody that'll give you thought, that'll challenge you. It's easy to drink your own bathwater, use a bad metaphor. It's easy to sort of do the same thing and look at the same way. I always like to find people that challenge my thinking, that make me think outside the box, that have been there, that have made the mistakes, learned the tough lessons. We don't really learn unless we skin our knee or skin our nose. And so I like to find somebody who's skinned their nose, who can point out the landmines, the potholes, etc., and I can skip those. I think it's very important to have a sensei.
yeah, I reflect on my first exposure to the Shin consultants was at HNI, where you were the CEO, and even when I left, they were still using Shin, and I think they're still using Shin to this day. So, how important is that an organization is bringing in an outside set of eyes to push the ball, challenge the status quo, set high expectations? Can an organization do that on their own? I mean, even Danaher, it's like, Danaher, 30 years into the journey, is still using outside people to push and challenge them.
Yeah, I think you and I have never really talked about this. I think it's very difficult for an organization to move forward on its own. And I think you want an organization that spends time talking about what is it we need to do, what have we seen that's done better someplace else, and do we have people who have experience with that can challenge it. And so we always had a new tool we were trying to add, whether it be Hijunka or single. We started off with single minute exchange, and we never figured that out. And then the office factory became a new initiative, and then I'm trying to think, on it goes. And you want people who have experience, that have been through that, have walked that ahead of you, that can help you with the tools and help you with the process, so that what you want to do is you want to do it faster. I don't think there's anything wrong with an organization figuring it out on their own, but you want to move through that quickly. And if you have somebody who's blazed the trail ahead of you, they can move through that trail faster.
I want to switch gears here for a second. So you and I were together last week. I won't say the organization, but we were in an organization that, by all accounts, outwardly is highly successful, highly profitable. There isn't a crisis per se, and this organization is about to embark on a lean enterprise journey. How do you create a crisis, quote unquote, in an organization that has known nothing but success for a long time? And you'd have to go back to maybe the inception of the company or the beginning years of the company to really find lean years where there wasn't anything you could hang your hat on that resembled anything like a crisis. And I see this a lot too with our clients, where highly profitable markets, they're taking share, all boats are rising, and the competitors are successful, they're successful. So how do you convince an organization that's known nothing but success that this will be beneficial to them?
Yeah, it's very difficult. Complacency is scary, though. Fat, dumb, and happy is scary, because if you look at like the Fortune 500, who was in the Fortune 500 10 years ago and who's in there now, it's changed dramatically.
It's like 70% over the last 30 years has gone out, something like that.
Yeah, and I think if you have success now, there's no guarantee you're going to have success in the future. And I think the scariest part for me is when I'm feeling good, is when I know, what's that Gordon Lightfoot song? I'm an old guy. There's
Before
a song
my time.
yeah, there's a song, Gordon Lightfoot, he's dead now.
Yeah.
He used to sing about start feeling better. He hated that. And I think that's the same thing with success. Is what is success? There's somebody who's always, the market is ruthlessly efficient. There's somebody who's always trying to take your business. Somebody who's always trying to figure out how to deliver more value to customers, give a better experience, more, better, faster, with less. Always something to do that. So it's very difficult to create that crisis if you don't feel that. And I'd say, if this is my advice, is if dealing with an organization like that doesn't want to change, then move on. Find somebody who does. And if you work for an organization like that, doesn't mean you can't do lean. It just means be careful about what you assume. If my advice to you is businesses like that, move on. Find somebody else that really wants to pull it.
Do you, do you think do you think the CEO has to have at all times some level of constructive paranoia, and even if they don't necessarily believe it themselves, they have to outwardly project onto the organization this set of higher expectations because people become complacent, they
Yeah,
become reliant on success.
I think it's part of the CEO's job. Constructive discontent, finding a better way. I think it's part of a CEO's job to always be searching for a better way. There's always a better way, no matter where you're at. John Wood or Lombardi, if you're from Wisconsin, didn't talk about did we win or lose. He talked about the perfect game. You can always do better, no matter how good you're doing. You can always do better. And I think if you're complacent and you like where you're at and your objective is to maintain status quo, you don't belong as a CEO. You should be doing something else.
Yeah. Is that nature or nurture, Stan?
I think it's nature. I think you're born that way. But I think that's a selectable trait. It's not a developmental trait. And I don't ask me why. It probably is both. I don't know.
I remember this story I heard about Nick Saban, which is kind of timely. He just retired here, I think, last week. So he won 7 national championships with Alabama, and I remember it was after, I think, the 5th championship. He was being interviewed right after they won the championship, like right after the game, and they said, Coach Saban, how are you going to celebrate with your team now that you won your 5th national championship? And he didn't even answer the question. He went on to talk about how they were far behind on the recruiting journey because the rest of the SEC had more time to recruit than they had because they were in this playoff structure now. And he felt like he didn't have time with the incoming freshmen to orient them to the program. So he was upset that the championship took away from their ability to get back to the process of winning. And part of me is like, how much of that did he really believe? Like that's how he is, or he had to put out there because he knows that if he didn't do it, no one else would do it because we just won the championship. And then he won the 6th championship and he got the question again, and it was something to the effect of, how are you going to celebrate? And he answered the question differently. He said, I told my team that they have 24 hours to celebrate. And then there was a follow-up question. And the follow-up question, well, what happens after 24 hours? And they went on to say, if we think we will show up on the field and trot out there as the 6-time national champion defending Alabama Crimson Tide, and that we're just going to win by virtue of being on the field each and every week, we're going to lose, right? And it is just like he was constantly reminding people that the process is always more important than the outcome. Like the process is what gets you the outcome, and that becomes harder over time because now you're on somebody's radar screen, right? And they play you differently and they attack you differently. It's the same in business too. It's like when you're on top, when you're Apple, everybody's gunning for Apple. So how do you call it constructive discontent, because so much of that can just wear you out too, can it? Like it's got to be
Yeah,
tiresome playing for Nick Saban.
yeah, exactly. And I think if I could go do things differently, I'd celebrate more of the success. I'd spend time saying, look, we're okay. Now, when you have a level, when you're a miserable SOB, according to my wife, it's no good. And I think Nick Saban probably is a miserable SOB. You want to find a way to celebrate and then move on to constructive discontent. And because that drives you to the improvement, because otherwise it wears you out and it wears people out. Now, this fear of success, you shouldn't be fearful of success. You just shouldn't stop if you're successful. So what do? Well, you find energy behind success and desire to stay on top. is what you have to do, I think.
Yeah, I mean, when he got asked why he retired now, that was the word he used, was energy. I don't have the energy to bring to this that I have in the past to be successful. Like he recognized he no longer had that energy.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah,
time to
but
move on.
72.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
And this is the good news for all you lean practitioners that are listening in. The good news for my friend Damon Baker, who has a consulting business in lean, is your job. You've got forever work, because the rule, the law of physics of entropy is alive and well. The market is always changing. Customers are always changing. Technology is always changing. Competitors are always changing. Everybody's gunning for you. And it's like, what do you mean they're out to get you? Well, they are out to get you. So you better wake up and you better start running fast. That's the good news is you got lifetime employment, Damon.
Yeah, for sure. We're gonna lighten it up a little bit here. So hilarious bloopers and failures. And you alluded to the fact that you had lots of failures in your career. So as you look back in the journey, what were just some of the things that you just shake your head at now and you go, geez, I can't believe I did that. Uh, what a epic mistake.
It's funny. It's a little bit like I'm able to forget most of my mistakes, right? But one that I remember, as I was reflecting on this question is early on, and so it's not a hilarious blooper. It's a good lesson learned. Is we were doing a Kaizen event on a production process, and there were two people in the cell. It was a relatively small cell. It was one of many events, and we took one individual out. We leaned the work out. We did standard work. We took one individual out. We put him on an RCI team early in the week. We left one individual, and it turned out this individual was a developmentally challenged adult. He was a great employee. He worked for us for 25 years, and the job was relatively simple. And we did the standard work, and all of a sudden, we pulled this second individual out, and the work went to hell. I mean, we couldn't get anything out. And so we're doing the Kaizen report out with executives, and the individual we taken out was there. He's part of the RCI team at this point. He's like, well, I know what's going on. And he sort of reluctantly, this is like the second or third day that we, into this project, we're trying to figure this out. He says, John, the guy we left in there, doesn't know how to read. Well, we were asking him to pull and develop just the product we needed. And we were giving him a sheet with a description of the product and the production schedule. He couldn't read. He was illiterate.
Mm.
As soon as we started, including cards with pictures of the product, I'm sorry about this.
That looks good there.
As soon as we gave him pictures of the product, the production process smoothed out. He did great. And so what I learned with all that is don't make it too complex. Make it really simple. It should be so simple I could do it. And so it's not a hilarious blooper. I'm sure we had some hilarious bloopers as well. I probably forgot about those.
Yeah, big lesson learned there. And I think Toyota, for that reason, the illiteracy reason, they do visual management in threes. So they have shapes, Disney characters, colors, things like that.
Yeah.
And because a couple things, people can't sometimes read, but then people don't have English as their first language, and you still need, yeah.
Yeah, this is a huge issue. English as a first language is a huge issue in many of our operations, because
for sure.
The employment crisis used to be we require high school education, all that sort of stuff. Well, you can't hire people in this world, or English is first language, so you change it. So the point is, you got to make it really, really basic and simple for whomever. They ought to be able to look at it without having to read it and figure out what they're supposed to do.
Yep. Ready to take some questions?
Sure.
Okay, so I'll remind everybody that's on the webinar, you can type in your questions into the GoToWebinar control panel. So we have several questions here queued up. and I'll moderate those for Stan. All right, so first question, Stan, would you say that there was a critical mass of leadership inside of HNI to push through the operational resistance that existed at the time?
Yeah, and the critical mass was a CEO who refused to flinch. And so, we didn't really have to deal with, and there was some early resistance, because early on, I think I was telling Damon, we brought in consultants. We took on our largest product lines, our largest plants at the worst time of the year, and we brought them to their knees. And there were people calling for heads to roll. And I remember the CEO that I worked for at the time, Jack, he sort of looked the other way and sort of shrugged it off because he'd been through, he knew what was true and what was going to work. And so he just kept effort. So I'm sure there's a critical mass, but I think it has to do with a CEO that gets it and is committed to it.
Yeah, for him, that was normal, right? I think that's important. I think if you're on this journey and you encounter mistakes like that and you haven't seen that before, it might be an indictment and be like, well, yeah, lean doesn't work, therefore we should get off this journey kind of thing. And we talked about this last week. It's like the financials are not set up to handle what happens in the early stages of a lean transformation.
Yeah,
I mean, think
exactly.
about like absorption and cost accounting and things like that. Like the CFO comes running to the factory floor going, what the heck happened? Like our profit went in the tank last month, and all that happened is we stopped running machines because we're burning through all this excess inventory that we figured out that we have, right? And you could make the wrong decisions by looking at the P&L, whereas lean principles would tell you that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Your standard cost system just doesn't account for lean, and we had some incredible results, and I couldn't figure out early on why it didn't translate to lean. And you're on it. It had to do with absorption and how overhead is determined. Overhead is determined based on hours largely, and so if you're reducing hours, you're reducing overhead absorption. If you're not reducing overhead, then you actually looks like your cost is going up, but you're reducing your cost.
Yeah. Yeah, that was like the famous Danaher story. The Rails brothers were like, what the heck did you do to Jacob's vehicle system, George Koenigsegger? Like, you're putting us in the tank.
Yeah.
But then they went and saw it firsthand. They're like, oh, when can we do more of this? And how quickly can we do it in the other companies that we know?
Exactly.
All right, next question. What was the strategic direction, in parentheses, North Star, that was established early on in HNI as part of the lean journey? So was there anything you were hanging out there as like a vision or an anchor about what RCI was and what we were going to focus on?
Yeah, I think it was about finding a better way, which was part of the core principle, and eliminating waste, providing more value. Our CEO used to walk through the hallway and he'd look at you and he'd say, "What are you doing to create value for customers today?" And it was funny because I knew how to answer that. I knew he was going to ask the question, but you see some people, well, I'm doing this many more reports. Well, that's not what he wanted to hear.
Yeah, I at HNI, people would run the other direction when they would see you commenting because you would ask those kinds of questions.
Well, and I came from an experience that was like that. Emerson Electric was that way as well, and I was selected, as I say, in part because I got that sort of stuff, I think.
Yeah, constructive discontent, it oozes from your pores.
Right.
All right. So next question: if you were to start over again, Stan, you do it all over again, new lean initiative, new company, not HNI, that has no exposure to lean, what would be the 3 critical things you would start with to ensure that this company was successful?
Yeah, I would make sure that the senior executives were involved in lean and they saw the power of lean, so they did lean events, Kaizen events. Secondly, I'd make sure that the metrics were aligned correctly. What is value? Define what value creation is, and I do problem solving training. I teach people how to describe problems and solve problems because that's really what lean is about. Those 3 things.
No, it's good. So simple. What would be a good tool or process that you could use to evaluate the current state of a company that has had some past success with lean, but has lost its way through employees leaving and subject matter experts leaving? So it's like getting your arms around where are we at and kind of where do we go from here? Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I would take a look at, if I was going to get hired here and I was going to roll in, I'd take a look at what are the, who are the shareholders, who are the stakeholders, and what do they think is most important? And I take a look at those metrics. So I look at, I look at sort of what are the, how does the customer define value and how are we doing against those?
Yeah, and I think, and we talked about this last week too, is sometimes continuous improvement organizations like create a little mini company inside the company that doesn't add a lot of value in a lot of different ways. So things like an army of assessors and all these maturity models and assessing, are we gold, bronze, silver, and all they do is go out and they do all these different things, and then you start to ask questions like, how does that tie to the P&L, and how is that focused on driving organic growth, and where are we driving margin expansion activities, and then they start talking a lot about culture and behaviors, and which are very important, but it's almost like they've over-indexed too far in that direction, and we've gotten distracted from the quantitative impact that lean should provide and deliver to a company, and we focused all our energies around behaviors, mindsets, and things like this. And you even see it to some degree in some of these organizations like Shingo, where you're a lifetime member of. It's like there's an over-indexing on some of that stuff. I feel it sometimes. I don't know what your reaction is to that.
Yeah, I have exactly the same reaction, which is the value is not created by corporate. Corporate, protects value and records value. They don't really create any value. The only people who create value are people who talk to customers, who design product, deliver products, manufacture products. And you got to watch that you don't sort of grow your cost structure and the complexity, and realize every time you add, and people in corporate are smart, they're well-meaning, they want to do a good job, and they want to be significant, they want to be relevant. So what do? They sort of ask the plant for information. And acquisitions are a great example of when that happens.
Yeah, I can't remember the guy who's Carl Icahn, the activist investor. He bought a freight company, and he started asking questions of the head of operations, and he said, what can we do to improve the company? And he said, you could shut down that headquarters and I would be able to save about 10% of the labor on my team. He goes, what do you mean? He goes, because all they do is ask my team questions, and I have a team of 10% of my labor is just asking the questions of corporate. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what he did. He shut down the headquarters and basically decentralized the organization because the value was in the businesses, not at corporate.
And board members can be the worst too. Board meeting process can be the worst because everybody means well. It's not like they're out to destroy value or create complexity, but they want to ask questions. So they ask questions based on their experience, and they may not know. And the organization spends all their time answering the questions. And then, and IT is the other one. So understand, simplify, standardize, or stabilize, and then automate or flow is the other part. So IT, information costs money. So it's understanding what creates value and what doesn't create value, and then understand where the complexity is and what costs money and what doesn't cost money is a big part of what the CEO does.
Here's another question, Stan. I imagine you encountered this many times throughout your career. How did you deal with individuals who resisted or stood in the way of progress with the lean transformation journey?
What we do is you identify them early. You talk through what is it. Sometimes it's a threat because of their experience, because of the measurement you have them under. You try to remove the sort of motivators that maybe make them that way. Sometimes you just spend time talking to them directly, saying, "Hey, Damon, I observe this." So confront the behaviors, the results, deal with the issue, not the personality. And so we used to talk to people directly. And then if they can't get on board, one of the big jobs for the CEO is to remove obstacles that obstruct the people. So we would either free up their future someplace else, or we change their motivation.
Do you think, I have found sometimes that the people who are quote unquote the naysayers care very deeply about the customer. They care very deeply about the work, and you need to channel or sometimes redirect their energy towards something that adds value in the organization. And I find that these people can be some of your biggest proponents and advocates of lean when their energy is redirected in a way that empowers them to make decisions to improve their work. Do you agree
Right.
or disagree?
I totally agree. And often what happens, Deem, and I know you know this, you probably have done this more than I have, is the best thing you do is they're speaking from a position of they're not informed. And so what you do is say, hey, why don't you participate in this event and see what it creates, and go talk to these customers. Could be there's somebody's in their ear chirping at them that feels threatened by lean. Lean is change, and change for some people is difficult. Other people love change, and you'll find people who love the change, and you'll find the people who resist it.
Yeah, and I oftentimes find that those people are also informal and sometimes formal influencers inside the organization that ever people look to for guidance and leadership. So if you can turn them, you make some serious progress.
Yeah, you either need to turn them, or else you need to remove them.
Yeah, right.
You can't
All right.
you can't stand to have that negative force
100%.
on any change.
Another question here. Do you believe that organizations should have dedicated resources to keep the momentum of the lean journey? As you mentioned, that things tend to move in the direction of chaos without drive.
I think the thing I see, and I experienced this I probably made the mistake of, when you don't have dedicated resources, I mean quality individuals, change, corporate change just sort of runs aground. It just loses energy. You need people to hold you accountable. You need people to provide the energy behind the change. And if you don't have dedicated resources, forget it. It's not going to work.
You said last week too that the level of talent, not only the people being in the role, but the level of talent in the role needs to be your best people, not the guy or gal that we can live without that's over here doing all this lean stuff while we're running the business. They are your best people.
Yeah, early on, we always looked, whenever we buy a company and we start a lean journey, we'd always find our most talented people and put them in the lean driver role. And then we tend to promote them into become our presidents, our head of operations, our plant managers, etc. And so if you don't have the highest quality people in there, then it's not something people aspire to, and they don't have any credibility to lead change. So you want the best and brightest in the role.
Yeah, and I think when the organization sees those people being promoted and given opportunities throughout the company by the pathway they took through the lean organization or the continuous improvement organization, it becomes important to them. Yeah,
Right
to
on.
learn how to do it for sure.
Right on.
So probably one more question, then we're probably out of time. So this one's related to strategy deployment or Hoshin Connery. So how did HNI incorporate strategy deployment along the journey? At what point in time, and what was some of your experience with that?
Yeah, we probably didn't do it well enough is the real answer. So, strategy for us is I would do a strategic review with the business, and we generally we want to half the bad and double the good. So we talk about, driving a certain level of earnings, a certain level of customer value. So whether it be, more, better, faster for less would be, we want to improve employee sort of safety. We want to improve productivity costs. We want to improve complete and on time. And we talk about, driving growth. And growth only comes when you have competitors from providing, a better value proposition to customers than they can get someplace else. And so we'd spend time on strategy and then roll it down. We didn't roll it down as well as we should have, I think, in retrospect.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's time, Stan. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Damon.
Yeah. Stay warm out there in Indiana. So before we bid farewell to Stan, I would encourage everybody to take a moment to reflect on all the insights and practical wisdom that Stan has shared with us today and how you can apply those in your own lean journey. If you have further questions or would like to explore the possibilities of initiating or improving upon your own lean journey, don't hesitate to reach out to us at Lean Focus. We're here to support you every step of the way. Again, thanks to Stan for sharing his experience and expertise with us. And we're grateful for his contributions to this series. And we hope to see all of you on an upcoming edition of Lean Catalyst. We're doing one a month. And you can actually go back and watch some of the previous ones. I think this is number 6 or 7, if I'm not mistaken. So we have another 5 or 6 queued up, and then we'll begin our annual cycle all over again. So thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your week. Bye, all. See you later, Stan.
Thank you, Damon. See everybody.
Bye.